The Giants' 2021 season has mercifully come to an end. What's next for Big Blue? We're going to talk about it coming up next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day, or if you're watching us on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you in part by OnlineGambling.com. OnlineGambling.com is the place to be for all the latest gambling news and tips throughout the NFL playoffs. Visit OnlineGambling.com/NFL to get the edge over the competition throughout this year's NFL playoffs. All right, folks. So normally the day after a game, I have David Turner on the show with me and we break down what happened, what they need to fix, and all that good stuff. Well, at this point, we kind of know what's been going on with the Giants. The offense has just been abysmal. The defense has put the good fight up, and after a while, there's only so much they can do before they break down. So we're going to go in a little different direction. Number one, I don't have David Turner with me this week. David Turner is off enjoying an outing with his daughter. Good for them. So you just got me this week. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think might come down the pipe with this Giant team. Now, we know that Dave Gettleman, the general manager, is probably gone. And I say probably because until it's official, it's not official. But that said, before the game on Sunday, Gettleman was taking pictures and just, kind of, I guess, reminiscing or whatnot with friends and family on the Giants sideline. Usually when you see somebody doing that, it means that they're thinking about moving on. So I'm pretty sure we can say that Dave Gettleman will not be back next year. I would be stunned if he's back. All right. I know, Captain Obvious, right? All right. So the question that becomes, who's going to be the next GM? And more importantly, what's going to happen with Joe Judge? So that's what we're going to talk about on today's show. All right. Now, let's talk about something that I found really interesting. And for those who haven't seen it, Jay Glazer of Fox Sports, amazing individual. I know Jay from way back in the day when he used to cover the Giants for the Post, and before that for the defunct Giants Extra. Jay Glazer of Fox reported that Joe Judge, if he stays, is angling for Kevin Abrams to replace Dave Gettleman. All right? And I want to talk about that segment, for that report for a moment. All right? That would be the absolute worst thing for the Giants to do. I don't think there's any way they could sell that to the fan base. All right, but let's explore what the reasoning is here. Judge of late, I've been getting the impression that he's kind of been dropping some hints, I think, that he hasn't been fully happy with some of the way things have gone on behind the scenes. And he did so again tonight when he talked about things he's learned versus things he's observed, and things that he would like to change if he is in a position to do so. So it's clear that, to me at any rate, that he maybe hasn't agreed with Dave Gettleman on everything. And I think that would be asking a lot to agree with somebody you work with on 100% of the things that, need to be agreed on. So that said, the feeling is, I think, that if you keep Kevin Abrams as the GM, because Kevin Abrams is a cap specialist and the guy who constructed the Giants cap as it currently stands, which, by the way, is a mess. All right. I did an article for Giants Country on the salary cap and why it is a mess today and why it'll be a mess for 2022. And in a nutshell, folks, 5 players on the 2022 cap list will account for nearly 50% of the total $208.2 million cap. So there's your main reason why the cap is going to be a mess. But I digress here. So in lobbying, if you will, for Kevin Abrams to be the GM, he can handle, the thinking is probably he can handle, the cap, the contracts, and so on and so forth. Judge, on the other hand, can handle the selection of player personnel. Now, basically, if this sounds familiar, it's the same type of arrangement I believe Bill Belichick has up in New England. Belichick has earned that right. All right. He's won a few Super Bowls. He has earned that right. Judge, in my opinion, has not earned that right. And for that reason, I don't want to see this arrangement come to fruition if that's indeed on the table. So here's the problem I have with this. Judge wants to, this is what it sounds like based on the report. He allegedly wants to, pick the personnel, shop for the groceries, so to speak, and his job will depend on, obviously, the scouts' reports that come in, some film work that he would have to do. To me, that's just biting off way more than I think he's going to be able to chew. This is a relatively still new head coach who has been learning on the job, which is a whole other problem in itself. And for him to want to maybe take on that responsibility, I think would be just career suicide for Joe Judge. Not to mention for the franchise. All right. Joe Judge, I think, is a smart man. When he was hired, I said, and I still say it today, I want to see him succeed because I don't think he's a bad guy. But I think now this sudden urge to want to take a bigger piece of the pie, the power pie, if you will, when you haven't really done anything to earn that, when your team hasn't gotten better, and yes, we can talk about injuries, folks, but every team has it. And yes, we can say that, well, not every team lost, their starting quarterback, or they lost their starting inside linebacker, or they had to play most of the season without their full complement of skill position players on offense, or their offensive line got beat up, and so on and so forth. We can talk about all that. But that's where coaching comes into play. So when I list the issues I have with Joe Judge, besides not, in my opinion, again, him not being in a position to demand and expect a bigger piece of the pie, I go back to the coaching staff that he assembled, which at the time, I admit, I thought, okay, this is an intriguing coaching staff, a lot of teachers, a lot of, guys who I think can make a go of this. Well, now we have seen 2 years of this stuff. And what I have come to the conclusion of after 2 years is that he's got maybe a few guys on that staff from the college rank who were learning on the job along with him. Because, look, sometimes coaches will say coaching is no different than teaching a high school student, a college student, or an NFL player. I don't think that's true, because the higher you go up, the more complex the game becomes. All right. So to me, get some more NFL quality coaches in there. Cut back on some of your college buddies, your college coaching buddies that you knew from way back in the day. Support yourself with a little bit better knowledge base, if you will. And then see what happens, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where I think you're going to see maybe changes on the offensive line coaching. You might see changes at the tight end. I do think Burton Burns, the running backs coach, is going to retire, and certainly the offensive coordinator is going to have to be switched out because Freddie Kitchens was no better than Jason Garrett. So those are some of the things, obviously, you want to swap out. All right, so getting back to this whole Abrams and Judge, quote unquote, proposed marriage. The other problem I would have with such an arrangement, the Giants have a very, very important draft coming up in April that they cannot afford to screw up. All right. Remember, they're not going to be able to do much in free agency. So they have got to knock this draft coming up out of the park. And the Giants will draft 5th and 7th in the first round. So that said, if Joe Judge becomes your de facto GM, the guy that has the full say over, okay, this is the guy that I want. And if the arrangement doesn't work out, then what? Guess what? The new coaching staff is stuck with players now that maybe don't fit what he wants to do. Then you get a new GM in here. And guess what? You have contracts now that you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to get these off the books because these guys don't fit what the program is? No. If you're John Mara and Steve Tisch, start over. It's that simple. It really is. And listen, I have never been in favor of advocating for someone to lose their job. All right? It's not fun. I've lost jobs in my lifetime. I don't wish that on anybody. But that said, you look at the reasons not to keep Joe versus the reasons to keep him, and I don't know that you can justify continuing on with him. I know John Mara said he wants to be more patient when he hired him, but I don't know that you can. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's show. But first, if you're aiming to get fit or eat healthier this year, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and you'll want to eat it because it tastes so good, unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical spill. And most Built Bars are covered in real milk chocolate, and they have about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. They're available in nut and nut-free varieties. And Built Bar makes it easy for you to stick to your New Year's resolution to eat right without the guilt and without the calories. Head on over to BuiltBar.com today and use our special promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your first order. That's code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, to save 15% off your first order at BuiltBar.com. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, I'd like to send a shout out and thank you to OnlineGambling.com for sponsoring today's podcast. If you don't know already, OnlineGambling.com is a website dedicated to giving bettors the edge. Throughout the playoffs, they're providing you with the best NFL tips, news, and more to help you make your bets smarter than ever before. OnlineGambling.com provides the best and most trusted experience online all day, every day, inspiring every bettor in the world to beat the odds. Make sure you visit OnlineGambling.com/NFL for all the latest news, tips, odds, and everything you need to get the advantage throughout the playoffs. Remember, OnlineGambling.com/NFL to make the most of this year's NFL playoffs. All right, Giant fans, you got Patricia Traina here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. And again, thank goodness the Giants season is over. Oh my gosh, we made it. Guys and gals, congratulations. Thank you for sticking with us here at the LockedOn Giants podcast. Hopefully we have tried to make it a little bit more digestible for you. I know it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy for me, definitely. I've said it before. Not fun covering a losing team. Not fun at all. And I'm actually looking forward to maybe doing a little work next week on a playoff-bound team, just to make sure that I know how to do it, because I do believe at some point the Giants will get back there. When, or if it's going to be in my lifetime, who knows? But I want to be ready just in case. But anyway, let's talk. And I have to do this, folks. I have to present both sides of the argument, because I know there are those of you who are saying, don't even waste your time talking about why Joe should return. I promise you this will be a short segment, because I don't have as many reasons to justify it. But I do have to be honest, and I have to be objective and balanced. So bear with me here. The biggest thing Joe has going for him, and I know you guys don't want to hear it, but he has not lost the locker room. And that's not easy. That's not an easy thing. Okay. When adversity strikes, it's very easy for guys to check out. It's very easy for guys to say, you know what, the heck with it. I'm not going to put myself through this physically or mentally. It's easy, if you will, for guys to bring in their golf clubs 2 or 3 weeks before the season ends and start thinking about what they're going to do and their getaway day, as soon as baggy day is over. And we can, all we have to go on here is Joe Judge's word that nobody has done that in the locker room. But look, that's quite an accomplishment to get these guys to stay dialed in. Now, we can talk about why they haven't been able to translate what they've done on the field and in the meeting rooms to the playing field. That's another topic. I don't have an answer for that. But there is something to be said about players staying locked in during hard times. They say adversity builds character, it builds calluses, and it makes it easier for you as you advance and as you grow as a professional. Judge has instilled a philosophy that, hard times will build character. And I really believe when you survey the players in that room, they're not just saying, oh, we like Joe, we want him back, just because it's the right thing to say or the only thing to say. I think they're sincere. I think, are you going to find 100% consensus? Probably not. But I think the people that are part of the core foundation and who understand what he's trying to do are going to support him and want him back. And that's difficult to do when you go back and look at how Ben McAdoo lost the locker room, when you look at how Pat Shurmur lost the locker room. So that's something Judge has going for him. All right. Now, what else does he have going for him? I'll put it out there. I don't know if this is going to matter, but believe it or not, folks, he is a good teacher. The man, majored in education, so he has an understanding on how to reach people, how to teach them and have what he's teaching them resonate with them. Again, why it's not transferring onto the field, why they're not passing the test on the field, maybe it's a pressure situation. I don't know. Maybe it's a lack of talent because of all the injuries, possibly. I don't know what the answer is, but I do think Joe is a solid teacher. And I think he understands how to resonate, how to get through to people. Maybe not in the way like, Bill Parcells back in the day when Parcells kind of knew how to press buttons of different guys and how far he could push them. Joe doesn't strike me as that type of guy, but he's a guy that, I think cares about his players, and they understand that and they recognize that in him. And there have been many examples of that. And when you have somebody who is your boss, who is very compassionate, you tend to kind of lay it out on the line for them and want to do well for them. So for that, I think Joe connects with his players, psychologically speaking. As a football mind, well, that's the jury's still out on that. I got to be honest with you. You look at, the schemes that have been brought into place. You look at the selection of coaches and just, 2 years in a row, there's been assistants that have either been fired or who have left on the staff during the season. You got to get some stability there. So that admittedly is a problem. So those are some of the things Joe has going for him. And of course, he's going to talk about how he's learning, how, the culture is so good. And that's fine. But you know what? To me, I think there's a few things more that I think he has working against him. And I think ownership needs to take into consideration when they make that decision. What are those things? Stick around and I'll tell you. Hey, Giant fans, this is Patricia Traina with an incredible app everyone who buys gasoline needs to know about. It's called Get Upside, and you can get 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time you fill up at the pump with the Get Upside app. Just download it from the App Store or Google Play. It's a free app, and use our promo code Touchdown, and you will get a bonus 25 cents off per gallon on your first fill up. That's right. On your first fill up, you'll save 50 cents per gallon as opposed to 25 cents. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using the free Get Upside app and cash out anytime you want to your bank account, to PayPal, or get an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Again, that's the Get Upside app available in the Google Play Store or Apple iTunes Store. And that promo code for your 50-cent per gallon fill up on your first fill up is touchdown. All right, Giant fans, you've got Patricia Traina here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. And goodness, by the time you hear this, hopefully we'll have some news about what the Giants are planning to do. And by the way, if we do get some news on Monday, I will do an emergency podcast to bring you up to date. So fear not, I will not leave you waiting until Tuesday. But otherwise, Tuesday, we're planning Twitter Tuesday, as always. So if you have your questions, you know what to do. The information's in the show notes. Can't wait to hear from you. All right, so in the last segment, I talked a little bit about reasons why Joe can make a case to stay. This segment, and I'm going to try to keep this balanced. I'm going to try not to go overboard. But I think there's a lot more reasons why I think Joe's argument to stay has deteriorated. The number one thing that kind of set off an alarm bell with me is in listening to Joe Judge speak after Sunday's game, the loss to Washington, was how I came away with the impression that he's still learning on the job. Now, the Giants organization, in my opinion, the football team, is at a crossroads. They have not officially said, okay, we're going to rebuild or we're going to compete. They have tried to have their cake and eat it. And until this team says flat out, we got to rebuild, we don't have enough pieces to compete, we're going to have this go back and forth. That's on the front office, okay? Now, where the coaching staff comes in is they have to be able to teach these guys. And I mentioned that I think Joe Judge can be a good teacher with how he resonates with these guys. But the rest of the staff, all right, if you need any proof that this coaching staff is, shall we say, maybe lacking in the teaching department, look at the Washington game. Do you remember that sequence where they were backed up, I think, at their 2-yard line? And what did they do? They ran 2 quarterback sneaks. Really? You know what that said to me? That said to me that they didn't have the confidence in their offense to throw a pass or run that ball out of that end zone, that they were afraid. They were like, oh, let's try and push the pile forward so that we don't get sacked in the end zone for a safety. Oh, my God. Come on. So you're saying that you don't have enough confidence in your players, in the job that you have done to coach these backup players to run that ball out of the end zone and get you some breathing room? Wow. That was a pretty damning statement. Another thing that I don't like, consistent mental errors between the false starts, not paying attention to, I think Cam Brown had a mental error on special teams where he interfered with a fair catch. There were, I think, a couple of times when, actually there was one time in this game, in the Washington game, where they had to call a timeout because the offense only had 10 players on the field. The game day management, folks, has stunk all year long. There's always something that has gone on that has cost this team either a timeout, a penalty, or something where they had to scramble and rush a play. 17 games they had to get this straightened out, and it still happened in week 18 of the NFL season. That, to me, is not good. And to me, that falls on Judge. If you can't manage that sideline, I mean, what is he doing that they can't get plays in enough time to give the quarterback time to set everybody up, make his pre-snap reads, and so forth? I mean, tell me, am I the only one who feels that the Giants rush things on offense? Am I the only one who feels that when receivers go out for passes that they don't fully get to run the patterns because everything is just thrown off timing-wise? And does anybody else feel bothered by the fact that they have to waste timeouts because they don't have the right personnel on the field? This is week 18, and this is still going on. Come on. Not good, guys. Not good at all. So that's a problem for me. What is also a problem for me with Joe, all right? The play calling. Now, again, that's under Freddie. I get it. But how often do you think Joe leans into the headset and overrules Freddie? I don't know the exact answer to that, but I would be willing to stake a bet that it's not often. So let me get this straight then. Joe supposedly, as head coach, reviews the defensive game plan, reviews the special teams game plan, reviews the offensive game plan. The defensive game plan, for the most part, has been solid. You can probably make the same argument for the special teams game plan. The offensive game plan has stunk week after week after week. I mean, really, you don't throw to your receivers until the second half of the game. What are you paying them for? I mean, somebody explain that to me. What are you paying them for? Okay, you could say, well, they have the backup quarterback in there, or the offensive line stinks. Okay, well, you can't throw a short pass? Something designed to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quickly? Really? I don't get it. All right, so bottom line, what are the Giants going to do? Well, as I record this, folks, it is a Sunday night. No announcement, no puff of smoke from the Quest Diagnostics Training Center. But here's what I would do. I was around when George Young was hired. And when ownership, at the time, Wellington Mara and Tim Mara were the two owners, basically said, George, you are in charge. You make the call. You do what you need to do. I would like to see the Giants bring in a GM from the outside, someone without prior ties to the organization, and put the same trust and same conditions, if you will, in place for that individual. So whoever it might be, Scott Pioli, Ed Dodds, whoever it might be, you are our general manager. You decide if you want to keep Joe Judge, if you want Daniel Jones as your quarterback. You make that call. You have our full support, regardless of what you decide. This way, you leave it up to the GM to not only get the coach and the quarterback on the same timeline with you, but also you have someone who, if something goes south, if the 2022 season goes south, you don't have to start over again and therefore have wasted a draft where you had 2 picks in the top 7, the top 7 of the first round. Don't waste it. Do the right thing. Get an independent GM in here. Let that person decide what to do regarding Joe, regarding the quarterback. End of story. It's that simple as far as I'm concerned. Nothing personal against Joe, but I think this is the best course of action for the Giants. The Giants botched this opportunity in 2015 when Tom Coughlin left because they wanted to keep continuity, and it didn't work then. It ain't going to work now. Patchwork has proven not to work. So that is what I would like to see from the Giants. Now, will it happen again? Stay with us all week. Once we get word out of East Rutherford as to what's going on, I'll jump in with an emergency podcast as need be. And as always, we'll just keep to the schedule Every day this week we'll have a show. We're planning for Twitter Tuesday as of now, but if we get news, we'll obviously move Tuesday to Twitter Thursday. So keep with me, folks, and fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be a fascinating ride. All right, folks, that'll do it for us for today on the LockedOn Giants podcast. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, or again, if we have news today on Monday, tune in later and I'll bring that to you. So thanks again for making us your first watch or your first listen of the day, and we'll catch you again soon.